Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Captain Ethan. It's a beautiful day to fly planes today, and today we are going through the iFly Coast Instrument, Instrument Orals Stage Check Guide, whatever it's called. You guys absolutely crushed it when I did the private pilot one, and now we're doing instrument because I am too lazy to do Shepherd Air, and you guys are probably too, or you guys are preparing for a check ride. I need to say a few things before I start because I got a lot of comments on the last one. I appreciate all of you guys just absolutely blowing that video up. It's insane. But the purpose of these videos are not supposed to be ground lessons. They're supposed to be reviews of knowledge that you've already accumulated throughout your instrument training or your private pilot training for the private pilot video. With that being said, there's going to be stuff in here that I'm going to miss, of course. Like last one, the pedostatic system. I'm not going to go into the full pedostatic system because you guys should know what it is. This is just supposed to be a general review of all of the instrument knowledge. And also, it's supposed to help remind you and bring back things that you've already learned. So, for example, I'm probably going to talk about approaches or something. And I'm probably going to ask a question about approach, and you're going to think about the answer in your mind, and then I'll probably confirm the answer verbally so you can hear it. Let's just get right into it. If you guys have any questions, let me know down below and I'll try my best to answer them. And also, I'm going to put the link to the PDF in the description because you guys asked for a ton in the private pilot video. So let's go get started. Hopefully my camera looks good. We're going to go ahead and go into the stage check oral guide. Hopefully the video looks better and the audio sounds better as well. References is going to be the FAR aim, the IPH, the IFH, the procedures handbook, flying handbook, all these advisory circulars, PHAC, POH. We are using the Piper Cherokee we're using the Archer 2 POH for this one. So if you guys fly Cessnas, I'm sorry, but yeah, and I also recommend you guys read through the ACS as well so you guys have a better understanding, and also the oral exam guide by ASA. I have the private pilot one. It really helped me a lot. And also mock orals helped me too. So let's start. How long is your pilot certificate valid for? It's valid. It doesn't have an expiration date. Privileges and limitations. This is going to be private pilot review for the first one, so I'm going to probably put a timestamp of where I'm going to start with the instrument stuff. But as a private pilot, you can act as PIC, carry passengers, conduct search and rescue operations, fly for charitable, nonprofit, or community event if you have 500 hours. It's in part 61 and part 91. Part 91 tells you the actual hour. I don't know the actual regulation though. Well, off the top of my head, I don't know the actual regulation number. And you can act as an aircraft salesman if you have at least 200 hours. And your limitations, you cannot fly for hire. You must pay no less than your prorated share. Documents you have to have with you to fly the plane. You need to have your pilot certificate, medical certificate, and government issued photo ID. How long is a medical certificate valid for? If you're under 40, you have first class privileges for 12 months. Then after 12 months, they drop down to third class until 60 calendar months. Second class is going to be the same. And then third class, you're going to have third class privileges for all of the 60 calendar months. 40 and older, for your first 6 months, you're going to have first class privileges. Then after that, it's going to drop down to second class privileges until 12 months. And then you'll have third class privileges until 24 calendar months. Second class privileges, you have them for a year, then third class for basically another year, and then third class privileges, you have them for 24 calendar months total. How do we keep our pilot certificate current? We do a flight review every 24 calendar months. You guys are not student pilots, so I'm not going to read the student pilot stuff. Currency requirements for carrying passengers. You must do 3 takeoffs and landings within the preceding 9 days in an aircraft of the same category, class, and type if required. And at night, these landings have to be made to full stop. And also for tail wheel, they also have to be full stop as well, even during the day. Night definition. Night is the time between evening civil twilight and morning civil twilight, and night landings can be logged 1 hour after sunset to 1 hour before sunrise. An instrument rating is required in Class A airspace operating under IFR and Class Echo airspace. I don't know why it doesn't say it on here, but in Class Echo airspace, you need an IFR rating. And anytime the weather's beneath VFR minimum, so ceilings below 1,000 feet or visibility less than 3 miles. And anytime you are operating special VFR at night, you also need an instrument rating for. Alrighty, now we're getting into actual instrument stuff as well. For recency of experience requirements to be PIC of a flight under IFR, you must have within the preceding 6 months, I need to pause this. Within the preceding 6 months, you need 6 instrument approaches and holding procedures, intercepting and tracking courses, and they must be completed in actual IMC or in VMC using a view-limited device, or in an flight simulator FTD. Safety pilots must possess at least a private pilot certificate with category and class ratings appropriate to the aircraft being flown, so at least a private pilot certificate, airplane, single engine, land. If a pilot allows his or her instrument currency to expire, what can be done to become current again? So if it's been more than 6 months since they've done their 6 hits, then they have to have an IPC. So you have 6 months of currency, 6 months of you can get current again, and then after that it's IPC. Required instruments for IFR operations, you need to have all your VFR stuff, so atomata, flames, flaps, and you also need grab card, which is going to be generator or alternator, radio, altimeter, ball, so your inclinometer, a clock with hours, minutes, and seconds, attitude indicator, rate of turn indicator, and directional gyro. Also, DME is required at or above flight level 240 if VOR navigation is required. What are the required tests and inspections of aircraft and equipment to be legal for IFR flight? They must have an annual VOR, 100 hour, or VOR is every 30 days for IFR, 100 hour is 100 hours. Pitot-static systems, 24 calendar months, which is required for IFR flight. Transponder, 24 calendar months. ELT, 12 calendar months. 1 hour cumulative use or half its battery life. And service bulletins and airworthiness directives complied with. Different types of methods for checking the accuracy of VOR equipment. You're going to have your VOT, your ground check, your airborne, airway, and dual VOR. Records must be kept concerning VOR checks, your date, place, bearing error, and signature. They can be written down or they can be electronically written down. Where can you find the location of airborne, ground, and VOT testing stations? They're going to be in the chart supplements. And what arrows need to be on, or what documents need to be on board an aircraft to make it legal for IFR flight? Your airworthiness certificate, registration, radio license for IFR or for international, operation limitations, and weight and balance equipment. Alrighty, describe the pitot-static system. I'm not going to describe the whole thing, but basically it's going to power your airspeed indicator. For the pitot tube, the static system is also going to power the airspeed indicator, the VSI, and the altimeter. You have a drain hole in the pitot tube. We have a pitot heat switch. You have 2 heaters. One's 100 watts, another's 35 watts. You have a static hole, ram air, baffle plate, static chamber, pressure chamber, and alt static source as well. I'm not going to go all through that. You guys can go read this really quickly. Basically, if you have a blockage in your pitot tube and the drain hole's blocked, your airspeed's going to basically your airspeed indicator is going to basically act as an altimeter. Cool. Just describe the gyroscopic instruments. You have actually a few. So you have your heading indicator, you have your attitude indicator, suction gauge, and you also have your turn coordinator. The heading indicator, the attitude indicator, and the suction gauge is going to come from the vacuum system within the plane, and the turn coordinator is going to use an electric gyro. There's 2 different types of ways gyroscopic instruments work. There's rigidity in space and precession. Rigidity in space is while spinning, a gyroscope will tend to stay fixed in its place of rotation or plane of rotation, and think of it as like a bicycle wheel with enough momentum you're able to stay naturally balanced. And precession, when a force is applied to a gyroscope, the resultant force is felt 90 degrees ahead in the direction of the rotation. The attitude indicator uses rigidity in space. Same thing for the heading indicator, and the turn coordinator uses precession, actually. Differences between the turn coordinator and the turn slip indicator. That question's not even in here. The answer's not even in here, but basically they're about the same, but the turn and slip indicator, it's going to be vertical, and the turn coordinator is going to actually have the airplane thingy. How does the vacuum system operate? An engine-driven vacuum pump creates suction, air is pulled through the filter and then directed to the instrument case. Different types of errors associated with the magnetic compass. You have variation, so remember east is least, west is best. Deviation, which is from magnetic fields or electrical currents within the actual inside of the airplane. That's why we have a compass deviation card. Dip error, so when flying on a north and south heading, these errors are more pronounced, especially like during turns. When I was south, so on a north heading, the compass will actually turn in the opposite direction and lag behind the turn, and when on a south heading, the compass will lead the turn and show the turn is being made at a much more fast rate than it actually is. Northerly turning errors, CG displacement of the float assembly and the compass causes false turning indications. When turning to the north, the turn should be stopped prior to arriving at the desired heading. And when turning south, turn past the desired heading. The rule is, so undershoot north, overshoot south. Acceleration errors, while on an east or west heading, acceleration results in a slight turn to the north. Deceleration results in a slight turn to the south. The rule is AND, accelerate north, decelerate south. Oscillation errors, a combination of all these errors and result in the compass swinging back and forth around headings being flown. I need to go grab water, so I'll be right back. This time I paused the recording so I didn't have to go in my editing software and do all that stuff. Alrighty, navigational equipment. What is an HSI? The horizontal situation indicator combines the functions of a heading indicator and the VOR receiver into one instrument display. This is what it looks like. Your plane might not have one. A lot of them do. Why doesn't the HSI process and makes use of lines of flux associated with the Earth's natural magnetic field, and they have two basic characteristics. So magnets align with these wires and a wire crosses them, an electrical current is induced. The flux gate compass uses the second principle to drive gyros that slave to its inputs. A flux valve, which is a small segmented ring that accepts the lines of flux, is in the direction sensing components of the system. It is located as far away as possible from the aircraft's local magnetic field to ensure accurate indications. The magnetic slaving transmitter sends an electric signal to the HSI, which operates a torque motor to align the instrument with its appropriate magnetic heading. Different classes of VOR stations and their service volume. So you have your terminal VOR, which is going to be from 1,000 feet to 12,000 feet. Low altitude, which is going to be 1,000 to 18,000. And high altitude, which is going to be 1,000 to 60,000. Terminal VORs, they have a volume of 25 nautical miles. Low altitude is going to be 40, and high altitude is going to be complicated. So from 1,000 to 14,500, it's going to be 40 nautical miles. From 14,500 to 18,000, it's going to be 100. From 18 to 45,000, it's going to be 130. Then it drops back down to 100 at 45,000 feet to 60,000 feet. Components of a VOR indicator instrument. You have your course index, your CDI needle, so course deviation. You have your deviation dots as well, so approximately 2 degrees in the VOR mode for every dot. To and from indicator, so if you're flying to the station or from the station, your unreliable signal flag, and you also have a glide slope flag if it has instrument or the ILS stuff. And you also have your OBS knob to change the course. How many degrees of deviation does each dot represent? Each dot represents 2 degrees of deviation. Half scale deflection is 5 degrees off course. How do you determine the VOR station is working properly? You tune the appropriate VOR frequency, use the ident feature to listen to the associated Morse code, and make sure the nav warning flag is not in view. Sorry. Ethan has a stutter. What happened to the VOR station? We're going under maintenance. It may translate a Morse code of test, which is dash dot 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 dash, or the code may be removed entirely. It's usually the code's removed entirely. What does it mean if there's only a single code identification every 30 seconds on a VORTAC station? The VOR function is not working, but the DME function is working. Limitations of a VOR, there's line of sight only, so if there's a blockage, you can't get it. The cone of confusion, so during passes of a station, the aircraft is directly above the VOR and causes large needle deflections and momentarily lost signal. Pilot error, which is failure to properly tune and identify, failure to check for accurate signal, and also reverse sensing. And to avoid reverse sensing when flying towards the VOR, you should always have a to flag. When flying away, you should always have a from flag. And what is DME and when's DME required? DME is distance measuring equipment. It is a separate ground station that may be combined with a VOR, ILS, or localizer, and it provides slant range distance in nautical miles. When using VOR navigation above flight level 240, DME or a suitable RNAV system is required. Do all VOR stations have capability of providing distance information? No. VOR stations do not provide distance information by themselves. VOR DMEs and VORTACs provide distance information. What is slant range distance? So slant range distance is the actual distance between the aircraft and the ground station as opposed to horizontal distance. The altitude the aircraft has a direct effect on slant range distance error. The error will be minimized if the aircraft is at least a mile away from the station for every 1,000 feet of altitude. Here's a little diagram showing how slant range distance works. It's basically like a triangle. Well, it is a triangle. How does GPS work? GPS is a space-based navigation system as opposed to land-based navies such as VORs and DMEs, all that stuff. The satellite constellation consists of 24 Navstar satellites arranged in 6 orbital planes 11,000 miles above the Earth. They're arranged so that 5 satellites are in view at all times, and distance is determined by the time it takes for radio signals to travel from satellites to aircraft. They're positioned in triangulated. The position is triangulated from multiple satellites. 4 satellites are needed to determine a 3D position, and 5 are needed for RAIM. Now, what is RAIM? RAIM is Receiver Autonomous Integrity Monitoring. The purpose is to determine the accuracy or integrity of the GPS signal. It does this by comparing the signals from the 5 satellites. If there's a discrepancy, RAIM will give you an alert that the signal may be unreliable. There are 2 errors you can possibly receive. Discrepancy or potential error has not been detected, and there are not enough satellites in view to give you RAIM. What is FDE? Fault Detection and Exclusion. So RAIM detects an error but does nothing about it except give you a warning. FDE is a function of some RAIM-capable GPS. It requires 6 satellites so that info from the faulty satellite can be excluded. What is WAS? WAS is Wide Area Augmentation System. It enhances the GPS integrity and availability by incorporating wide area ground reference stations to monitor the signal from the GPS satellites. The information sent to a master station where the correction occurs, and the correction signal is sent to a GEO, a geostationary satellite, and is broadcasted on the same frequency as GPS to WAS receivers. What are the requirements of using GPS for IFR? GPS must be certified by TSO C129 for RAIM or CSO C145 or 146 for WAS. The installation must be done in accordance of Advisory Circular 2138, and if not, then the GPS can only be used to enhance situational awareness by active monitoring or an alternate navigation source is required. Well, benefits and limitations of RAIM-capable GPS. As long as RAIM is assured, no requirement to actively monitor other navigational sources. Generally only provide lateral guidance with the exception of Barrow VNAV equipment, and alternate airports must have an instrument approach procedure other than GPS, and those ground-based navigates must be monitored. RAIM is not guaranteed. Signal could be lost due to inadequate number of satellites, satellite malfunction, antenna location on the aircraft, and changes in pitch or bank attitude. How do we verify that we will have RAIM during the flight? There's a link right here that you can use to verify. We can open it. I agree. So right here, all this stuff right here. So with Barrow aiding and without Barrow aiding, we have these little RAIM things. Flight service station briefers can also provide RAIM predictions for a 3-hour period, and alternatively go to AUX page 3 on the GNS 430 and use the RAIM prediction tool. What are the benefits of WAS-capable GPS? They're more precise than RAIM. They provide lateral and vertical navigation without the temperature errors associated with Barrow VNAV. No RAIM prediction is necessary. An airport that only has GPS approaches may be selected as an alternate. And for flight planning purposes, only LNAV minimums can be considered. What are the components of the ILS? You have the visual, so the approach lighting system, VASI, PAPIs, and precision approach runway lighting, range, marker beacons, compass locator or DME, and lateral and vertical guidance, so the localizer and the glide slope. What are the distances from the threshold of the inner, and the outer markers? The outer marker is going to be 4 to 7 miles, usually at the glide slope intercept. Middle marker is going to be 3,500 feet away from the runway. It represents the decision altitude, so 200 feet above the touchdown zone elevation. And the inner marker is located between the middle marker and the landing threshold, represented by the decision height for a Category 2 ILS approach. Substitutes for an ILS outer marker can be compass locators, DME, VOR, GPS, precision approach radar, and airport surveillance radar. Service volumes for a localizer, so they'll go out to, I think that's 10 miles. So for 18 nautical miles, they'll have a 10-mile deflection, and for in between 10 miles, they have a 35-mile deflection. I'm pretty sure. Don't quote me on this because I can't. I think that's miles. Where's the localizer antenna array located? It's the departure end of the runway aligned with the center line, and the course width of the localizer. Localizer courses may vary between 3 and 6 degrees, so that the landing threshold should be a total width of 700 feet. What is the sensitivity differences between the CDI tuned to VOR and CDI tuned to a localizer? Full-scale deflection represents at least 10 degrees when tuned to VOR and 2.5 degrees when tuned to a localizer. Usable range of the glide slope is about 10 nautical miles, and the glide slope equipment is located between 750 feet to 1,250 feet from the approach end of the runway and 400 to 600 feet to one side of the center line. Dimensions of the glide slope course, the total width is 1.4 degrees, therefore full-scale deflection represents at least a 0.7 degree, Errors, what errors is the ILS subject to? So reflection radial waves can bounce off of surface vehicles or other aircraft, leading to erroneous indications, and false courses intercepting the glide slope at other than the published altitude can cause confusion because the glide slope equipment inherently produces various courses at higher vertical angles. What is a simplified directional facility? You're probably not going to fly this, but it's still good to know. It provides lateral guidance similar to a localizer, but less accurate because the course is fixed to either 6 or 12 degrees. The SDF antenna may be offset from the runway center line, but usually not more than 3 degrees, and there also is no vertical guidance. What is an LDA? An LDA is a localizer type directional aid. It's more precise than an SDF because the course is usually between 3 degrees to 6 degrees, just like a localizer, hence localizer type. An LDA may not provide a glide slope for vertical guidance in some instances, and there are some published as LDA glide slope and are characterized as APV, so approaches with vertical guidance. So what makes it different from a localizer or ILS? An LDA is not aligned with the runway. Upon arriving at the MDA, the pilot will have to maneuver the aircraft into position to make a normal landing. LDAs may have straight-in minimums, however, if the alignment is within 30 degrees of the runway center line. So if it's more than 30 degrees, they will not have straight-in minimums. Alrighty, IFR departures. What are the elements of an IFR clearance? So you have your clearance limit, your route, altitude, frequency, and your squawk code, so the craft clearance. Visibility, minimum visibility needed to take off. There's no weather limitations for operating under Part 91, but standard takeoff minimums, however, are 1 statute mile for aircraft having 2 engines or less. 2 different types of departure procedures. You have obstacle departure procedures and standard instrument departures. ODPs are published primarily to provide the pilot with the means to get from the terminal area to the en route structure while remaining clear of obstacles. There's an imaginary plane called the 41 Obstacle Identification Scale. If the obstacle penetrates this plane, then the following may happen. There will be a steeper than normal climb gradient published. Other than standard takeoff minimums will be published so that pilots can maintain visual separation of the specific departure route will be published. What criteria determines that you will remain clear of the obstacles when flying an ODP? Across the runway departure end at or above 35 feet AGL. Make the first turn no earlier than 400 feet AGL unless otherwise specified. And maintain a climb gradient of at least 200 feet per nautical mile unless otherwise specified. Pilots' responsibilities concerning ODPs, they must determine that an ODP has been published, determine whether or not to fly, even if it's not issued by an ATC and a clearance. Pilots are encouraged to fly ODPs at night in marginal VFR and IFR conditions, determine aircraft performance is adequate for the procedure, and be aware of low close-in obstacles. How would you know if an ODP has published for an airport? The T symbol in the note section of an instrument approach procedure means that takeoff minimums are not standard. Refer to takeoff minimums of the terminal procedures publications for the new criteria and ODPs. ODPs are always textual and sometimes graphic. Graphic ODPs will have obstacle printed on them. How can you determine if your aircraft will be able to meet the required climb gradient? Determine your aircraft rate of climb with the POH. Use the chart in the back of the TPP to convert it to climb gradients. Alternatively, rate of climb equals ground speed divided by 60 times the climb gradient. What are low, close, and obstacles? I kind of mentioned it. Obstacles are located within 1 nautical mile of the departure of the runway that penetrates to 40 to 1 OCS. Avoidance can be assured by early liftoff or visually. What does VCOA mean, and when would this option be published? A visual climb over airport allows the pilot to climb while circling to get to a safe altitude. It is developed if there are obstacles beyond 3 statute miles of the airport that require a climb gradient of more than 200 feet per minute, and it must be conducted in VMC. Why are SIDs published? While flying SIDs still provide obstacle clearance, they're designed to reduce ATC and pilot workload, minimize communications, increase airspace capacity, simplify clearances, and comply with noise abatement procedures. SIDs must be issued in a clearance by ATC and always printed graphically in the TPPs. Where can you find SIDs? SIDs are always printed graphically and can be located in the TPPs after the last approach chart for a given airport. Here's a little legend as well. Cool. And route procedures. What are the dimensions of a Victor airway? Victor airways always begin at 1,200 feet AGL, extend up to 17,999 feet MSL. The width is 8 nautical miles, 4 nautical miles from each side of the center line. When navigating from VOR to VOR, when you change frequencies to maintain course guidance at the point depicted on the airway as the changeover point, and in the absence of a changeover point, the halfway point on the airway, and whenever there's a bend in an airway. What are minimum altitudes for IFR flight in mountainous areas 2,000 feet above the highest obstacle within 4 nautical miles, and non-mountainous areas 1,000 feet above the highest obstacle mile within 4 nautical miles? What areas are considered mountainous? Here's a little chart on here. Cool. What are different en route altitudes? You have your MEA, which is going to be your minimum en route altitude, which is the lowest altitude that provides both obstacle clearance and nav aid reception. You have your MOCA, which is the lowest altitude that meets obstacle clearance requirements but only guarantees nav aid reception within 22 nautical miles. It's designated with a star symbol. An MRA, a minimum reception altitude, lowest altitude at which the fix can be identified. For example, if there's a fix marked by 2 intersecting VOR radials, the aircraft must be at or above the MRA if one is published in order to receive both signals. MAA, maximum authorized altitude, the highest altitude where adequate nav aid reception is guaranteed. Your MTA, which is your minimum turning altitude, lowest altitude at which an aircraft can safely turn from one leg of an airway to the next. Different factors such as aircraft speed and angle at which the airways join create a need for obstacle clearance in the greater area. Your MCA, which is your minimum crossing altitude, the lowest altitude at which a fix can be safely crossed, is marked on the low en route with a flag and an X inside of it at the fix. Here's some chart symbols for legend. I'll talk about it really quickly as well. So, different from a VFR sectional, airplane, seaplane bases show in blue and green have an approved low altitude instrument approach procedure published. Those in blue have an approved Department of Defense low altitude instrument approach procedure and or DoD radar minimum published in DoD Flips or Alaska Terminal. Here's some more legends. I'm just going to scroll really slowly so you guys can look at it and reference it. Cool. What are the required reporting points while en route? So Marvelous VFR 500, never heard of that for some reason. So your missed approach, airspeed change to 5% or 10 knots, whichever is greater, reaching clearance limit or holding fix, vacating an altitude, ETA change of more than 2 minutes, leaving assigned altitude, outer marker inbound if you're in a non-radar environment, unforecasted weather conditions, safety of flight, anything that affects it, VFR on top altitude change, final approach fix inbound, non-radar environment, radio failure, and 500 feet per minute unable to maintain. What information should be included in each report? Your aircraft identification, position, time, altitude or flight level, ETA, and name of next reporting point. The name only of the next succeeding reporting point and pertinent remarks. What are the appropriate procedures for in case of communication failures under IFR? Squawk 7600 in the event you are in VMC, stay VMC and land as soon as practical. And choose your route in this assigned order. So your assigned route, vectors, if you're receiving vectors for a fix and you lose communications, fly directly to that fix. Expected, then as filed. And then choose whichever altitude is highest, so your ETA, your expected, or your assigned. Maximum holding speeds, I'm going to go from slow to fast. So maximum holding speed on 6,000 feet and minimum holding altitude is going to be 200 knots. 6,001 feet to 14,000 feet, it's going to be 230, and 14,000 feet and above is 265 knots. And that's indicated, not true airspeed. In which direction should turns be made in a standard holding pattern? They're going to be to the right. ATC will specify to the left. What are IFR fuel requirements? Enough to fly to the destination with a 45-minute reserve. When an alternate is needed, there must be enough fuel to fly to the destination and the alternate with a 45-minute reserve. An alternate is required whenever the weather at the destination airport has a ceiling less than 2,000 feet or visibility less than 3 statute miles during a period between 1 hour before the ATA and ending 1 hour after. Standard weather minimums to file an airport as an alternate. So a precision approach must have 2 miles visibility and 600 feet ceiling. A non-precision approach must have 2 miles visibility and 800 feet ceilings. Can you choose an airport without an instrument approach procedure as an alternate? If there's no published procedure, the weather must allow a descent from the MEA to a landing under IFR. How would you know if an airport has other than standard alternate minimums? You'll see this A and a triangle symbol. Go to the alternate minimum section of the TPPs to see what the weather requirements are to file. What airports cannot be filed as alternates? So if there's an A in the triangle with an NA, the NA means that alternate minimums are not authorized due to either unmonitored facility, absence of weather reporting, or inadequate navigation coverage. Can an airport that only has a GPS be filed as an alternate? Only if the aircraft is equipped with a WAAS-capable GPS certified under TSOC 145 or 146. What are tech routes? Tower and Route Control is a service that provides pilots to travel between airports and selected metropolitan areas without leaving approach control airspace. It is designed to expedite air traffic and reduce ATC and pilot communications. Also, you'll find these in the Tower and Route Control section of the chart supplement. What are preferred IFR routes? They are established between busy airports to increase system efficiency and capacity and help with pilots plan their route of flight. What is RNP? RNP describes the course route width of an RNAV route. The aircraft's total system error must remain bounded to the appropriate level for 95% of the total flight time. Here's a little diagram as well. Where does the sensitivity change from an en route to terminal and terminal to approach mode? The navigation system will operate in route mode until 30 nautical miles away from the airport, at which the point will change into terminal mode. Within 2 nautical miles of the final approach waypoint, the approach mode will become active. Let's talk about arrivals and approaches now. What is a STAR? A STAR is a standard terminal arrival procedure that are designed to leave the en route structure and bring the pilot to a navigate or fix to begin an approach. Unlike departure procedures, transitions occur before the STAR itself. The STAR is named after the fix where the transitions come together. Why is an 8 included in the title of this STAR? When there's a significant change made to a procedure, the number of the procedure increases by 1. What does links 8 mean? It is an associated compute route for the arrival used for electronic filing of an IFR flight plan. The name of the desired transition comes before the name of the STAR. If, for example, we'd like to file this route using the Palmdale transition, we'd do it like pmd.links8. How are transition routes differentiated from the arrival route? The heavy black lines represent the arrival. The thinner lines are the transitions. The thinnest lines are only used to identify fixes. What are some of the sections of an instrument approach plate? Here we go. And here's what the VOR runway 14 looks like. Let's go through them one by one. So you have your profile right here. So the glide slope outer marker altitude, missed approach point for localizer only, all this stuff. Just I'll go from the top and scroll down slowly. Cool. What are the different segments of an instrument approach? You have your initial, which begins at the initial approach fix. Your intermediate begins at the intermediate fix. Your final, which begins at the final approach fix and brings the aircraft down to appropriate minimums for landing. And your missed approach point begins at the missed approach point and ends at the designated fix. During a precision approach or APV, this occurs at the decision altitude. When it's a procedure turn not authorized, when there's no PT is printed, when there's a hold in lieu of a procedure turn, when cleared straight in, timed approaches from a fix, and radar vectors. What are the differences between precision approaches, non-precision approaches, APVs, and radar approaches? Precision approaches provide both lateral and vertical guidance. Non-precision approaches provide only lateral guidance. APVs, approaches with vertical guidance, provide course and glide path information, but do not conform to the ICAO Annex 10 standards. And radar approaches and ATC controlled monitored provide. An ATC controller monitors the progress with radar with the PAR approach. ATC can give both lateral and vertical guidance. ASR approaches is only lateral guidance. What is the differences between a contact and a visual approach? A visual approach is issued by ATC or by pilot request. It requires at least 3 stationary miles visibility and 1,000 feet ceilings. Pilots must have runway or aircraft to follow in sight. Radar service is terminated. Pilots is responsible for traffic and obstacle avoidance. Contact approaches must be requested by pilot. Airports must have an instrument approach procedure. It requires only 1 stationary mile visibility, and pilots must stay clear of clouds. Pilots retain IFR clearance and squawk code, and pilots are responsible for traffic and obstacle avoidance. How are speeds determined for the aircraft approach category? Speeds is based on VREF. Category A is between 0 and 90 knots, B 91 to 120, C 121 to 140, D is 141 to 165, and E is 166 knots or more. Then you also have circling approach area, so 1.3, 1.5, 1.7, 2.3, and 4.5. What does the C symbol represent? It represents expanded circling minimums. You're going to find these in the AIM, but there's also a diagram right here that you guys can take a screenshot of. What does the A represent in the title of this approach? Circling minimums only. The first approach for an airport with these minimums begin with A and continue in alphabetical order. When our circling only minimums published, when the final approach course aligned with the runway exceeds 30 degrees and descent gradients is greater than 400 feet per nautical mile, and when the runway is not clearly defined. What does the Z represent in the title of this approach? When there's more than one straight-in approach with the same type of guidance, a letter suffix is added to the title starting with Z and continues in reverse alphabetical order in cases there's more than one GPS approaches. So like you'll have RNAV Zulu, RNAV Yankee. Same thing with ILSs too. What is the visibility requirements to fly this approach down to RNP.10 minimums? It's going to be 500 feet RVR. What is RVR? RVR is runway visual range, is the maximum distance that runway lights or markings can be made out from a specific point on the runway. RNP means in the context of this approach, the one that I showed you, we require navigational performance special training by aircrews and aircraft that meet the specific standards in Advisory Circular 90-101, hence authorization required. The RNAV equipment must have monitoring alerting capabilities, and the different levels of RNP represent the width of route from the center line to the boundary. What is an MDA and a DA? An MDA is the low altitude and MSL to which a pilot can descend, to which a descent is authorized on final approach. And a decision altitude is the lowest altitude on a precision approach or approach with vertical guidance expressed in MSL. When you arrive at the DA, decision altitude, the missed approach point must be executed, whereas the MDA, you hold the altitude until either the runway environment is in sight or the missed approach point is received. When can you descend below the MDA or DA? The aircraft must be continuously in a position to descend and landing using normal maneuvers at a normal rate. Flight visibility is at or above which is prescribed in the instrument approach. When the approach lighting system becomes visible, the pilots may descend down to 100 feet above the touchdown zone elevation. And when any of the following become visible, a descent to a landing may be made. So red terminating bars or red side row bars, REILs, VASIs, PAPIs, thresholds, threshold markings or threshold lights, touchdown zone markings, lights, runway markings, or lights. Touchdown zone elevation determines the highest elevation in the first 3,000 feet of the runway. What are the different landing minimums available for GPS approaches? There's LNAV, LNAV plus V, LNAV VNAV, LPV, and LP. You guys can take a screenshot so you guys can remember, or just look at it and memorize it. What is Baro VNAV equipment? Baro VNAV equipment uses barometric altitude information to compute a vertical guidance path. Extreme temperatures can cause readings that are inadequate for instrument approach procedures. Different instruments Oh my gosh, I can't talk. Different instrument approach procedures can have temperature limitations for which uncompensated Baro VNAV equipment can be used. Identify the following signal. The visual descent point identifies the point at which a normal descent to a landing can be made at the touchdown zone. Weather information, standard temperature and pressure, 15C or 59F, 2992 inches of mercury, or 1013.2 millibars. Discuss isobars. Isobars are connect equal lines of pressures, and closest space isobars means that there's a strong pressure gradient and winds will be strong. How do surface winds flow in relation to isobars? Y and winds aloft at the surface winds flow at an angle to the isobars because of surface friction. Aloft, winds from more or less parallels because of the Coriolis force. What type of clouds, visibility, and precipitation will you expect from stable air? In stable air, you'll expect stratiform clouds, poor visibility, smooth air, steady or continuous precipitation. Unstable air, you'll find cumuliform clouds or clouds with vertical development, good visibility, turbulence, and showery precipitation. What are the general characteristics of low and high pressure areas? So low is going to be cyclone, counterclockwise and rising air. High is going to be anti-cyclone, clockwise and descending air. What is a ridge and a trough? A ridge is going to be extended area of high pressure, and a trough is going to be extended area of low pressure. What must be present in order for a thunderstorm to form? In unstable air, sufficient moisture, and lifting action. What stages of a thunderstorm? There's cumulus, mature, dissipating. What is wind shear? Rapid change in wind direction of velocity. It can cause dramatic changes in indicated airspeed and cause severe turbulence within the shear zone. Dew point is the temperature at which the air becomes saturated. And there's different types of fog. So advection, fog, moist air moves over colder land or water. Radiation forms on clear nights with little or no wind and only over land. Upslope, moist, unstable air is cooled as the wind pushes it up a slope. Precipitation induced, warm air falls into cool air. Evaporation from the rain saturates the cool air and fog forms. How does icing affect aircraft performance? Thrust falls off, lift lessens, drag increases, and weight grows. Icing is just bad in general. Different types of icing. You have induction, so within the carburetor. Instrument, so pitot tube or static ports, and structural, so like on the surface, so like the tailplane, wings, all that stuff. You also have rime ice, which is small ice, small raindrops found in stratified clouds or drizzled freeze upon impact with the airfoil. Clear ice, which is large supercooled water droplets found in either heavy rain or cumuliform clouds striking the airfoil but do not freeze immediately. And mixed ice occurs when drops vary in size. What kind of weather briefings can you get from a flight service station briefer? You can get standard, abbreviated, and Outlook. Standard should be requested when planning a flight and no previous weather information has been gathered. Abbreviated is used to supplement mass disseminated data. And Outlook is requested when proposed departure time is 6 or more hours away. What is EFAS? EFAS is En Route Flight Advisory Service. It provides up-to-date weather advisories for pilots while en route. On what frequency can you contact EFAS? 1.2.0 is no longer in use of 2015. What is a METAR? METAR is Aviation Routine Weather Report. It's routine or special. It'll tell you if it's special, issued hourly and valid for the hour. TAFS is a terminal aerodrome forecast. There's 3 types: routine, amended, or corrected. Issued 4 times a day, every 6 hours, valid for 24 to 30 hours, and forecast for area within 5 statute miles of the airport. What is the definition of a ceiling? The height above the ground of a broken or overcast layer. Does a TAF report cloud ceilings in MSL or AGL? They're going to be in MSL. Describe from becoming tempo prob on a TAF. From is rapid change occurring within the hour. Becoming is gradual change to take place over the course of 1 hour. Tempo is between the predicted period. This weather will only occur for less than an hour. And prob is number placed afterwards. It's the probability of the weather forecasted to occur. What is an area forecast and 4 sections of it? They're issued 4 times daily. Header, synopsis valid for 18 hours, VFR clouds and weather valid for 12 hours, and outlook valid for 6 hours. There's an area forecast for cloud ceilings in MSL or AGL. They're going to be MSL unless preceded by AGL or SIG for ceiling. AirMet is Airman's meteorological information issued for mountain obscurations and widespread high fire conditions for Sierra, moderate turbulence and surface winds 30 knots for Tango, and moderate icing for Zulu, and they're valid for 6 hours. SIGMET is significant weather information issued for severe turbulence not associated with thunderstorms, widespread dust storms, and volcanic ash, severe icing, and they're valid for 4 hours. Convective SIGMETs are issued for thunderstorm convective activity, winds greater than 15 knots, and hail greater than 3/4 inches. Winds and temperature aloft forecasted. They're issued twice a day every 12 hours and provide wind and temperature information for specific areas in the United States. Temperatures above 240 are identified are negative. What does 710.556 mean on a winds and temperature aloft forecast? And forecasted level is 30,000 feet. Winds are from 210 at 105 knots, and the temperature is negative 56 degrees. Winds will not be forecasted within how many feet of the station? 1,500 feet. And temperature will not be forecasted within how many feet of station elevation? 2,500 feet. Discuss the surface analysis chart. They're issued 8 times daily and valid for 3 hours. Shows position pressure systems, fronts, local weather, wind speeds and directions, and visual obstructions. Discuss the weather depiction chart. They're issued 8 times daily and valid for 8 hours. Graphical depiction of METAR information is a flight planning tool to see overall surface conditions across the United States. Discuss the significant weather prognostic chart. Their forecast of aviation weather hazards such as ice and freezing levels and turbulence. Issued 4 times daily. There's a 12-hour forecast and a 24-hour forecast. Radar summary chart issued 35 minutes past the hour, valid for 1 hour. Displays areas of precipitation and indicates the height of the radar echo tops and hundreds of feet MSL. Aeromedical factors. We're almost done. Trust me, we're almost done. I want to be done as much as you want to be done. Body systems that are used to a certain orientation, movement, space. There's vestibular, somatosensory, visual, and I think that's another one, but no, it's not. So vestibular, the inner ear system composed of 3 semicircular hollow but fluid-filled canals arranged in the pitch, roll, and yaw axes. Somatosensory is the nerves in our skin cells. And visuals are eyes, lights from the sun. What is the cause of middle ear pain in flight, and how can we mitigate it? Air inside of the middle ear is normally equalized through the Eustachian tube. I don't know how to pronounce that. Hypoxia is a state of oxygen deficiency in the body. It occurs at 4 levels. There's lung hypoxia, which is hypoxic hypoxia. Blood, which is hypemic hypoxia. Cell, which is histotoxic hypoxia. And stagnant hypoxia. Hypoxic, oxygen is not available at adequate pressure. Blood is, or hypemic is inability of red blood cells to carry oxygen to other cells. Histotoxic is like using drugs. So cells other than blood cells and ability to use available oxygen. And stagnant is an ability of oxygen to reach cells because of poor cell circulation. Some symptoms of hypoxia: poor judgment, memory, alertness, visual acuity and coordination, sensations of euphoria, and sometimes even belligerence can occur. Other symptoms include dizziness, headache, drowsiness, and cyanosis. What is hyperventilation? How do you treat a hyperventilating passenger? Is an abnormal increase in the breathing rate that leads to deficiency of carbon dioxide. Talking out loud can help, having to breathe in the paper bag, or just slow your breathing. In-flight illusions, this can be your ice flags through your inversion. Abrupt change in altitude creates the illusion of tumbling backwards. Coriolis, rapid head movement causes the illusion of accelerating and turning. Elevator, updraft causes the pilots to think the aircraft's in a climb. False horizons, leans, autokinesis, graveyard spiral, and somatographic. Runway illusions, a narrower than usual runway can create an illusion that the aircraft is higher than it actually is, leading to a lower approach. And runway slope illusion, or a wider than usual runway can create an illusion that the aircraft is lower than it actually is, leading to a higher approach. Runway slope, if it's downsloping, the aircraft is lower than it actually is, leading to a higher approach, and upsloping, the illusion can create the aircraft is higher than it actually is, leading to a lower approach. What is the definition of ADM? A systematic approach to risk assessment and stress management. Hazardous attitudes, RAIM, so resignation, anti-authority, impulsivity, invulnerability, and macho. 5 are the ways that we can mitigate risk: the I'm safe, the PAVE, and the 5 P's, so illness, med, stress, alcohol, fatigue, eating. Pilot, aircraft, environment, and external pressures. Pilot, passenger, plane, programming plan. How do we assess risk in flight? We use the DECIDE model. Detect, estimate, choose, identify, do, and evaluate. And that's it. Hopefully you guys enjoyed watching this. I appreciate you guys. I can't even talk anymore. But I appreciate everybody who watched all the way into the end. If you guys haven't already, make sure you guys go hit that subscribe button down below. I don't know when the commercial one's going to come out yet, so if you guys need an update on it, join the Discord. It's in the description, and I'll see you guys in another video. I'm going to take a nap because this just hurt my lungs, and my voice, and my vocal cords, and my mouth is dry.